Hey guys, we wanted to give you a little more of last week's episode. We talked about dating. We wanted to just continue the conversation as we filmed this episode in front of a live audience and then had a great discussion with them afterwards. So we're sharing that with you today.
That's right. Speaking of live audience, if you want to ever get in on that and be part of our live audience for these Clearly tapings, you can. You can become one of our podcast partners by heading over to patreon.com. That was 3 P's, Kelly.
Lots of P's.
Patreon.com, search for Jimmy and Kelly Needham. And for as little as $5 a month, you too can join us live. Q&A, repartee, back and forth. It's a blast.
So listen in. This first clip you're about to hear is a continuation of our discussion from last week's episode. So many of the reasons our experience dating was so positive and had so many good things happening in it was discipleship.
Yeah.
It was not Jimmy and Kelly are super smart and figured some stuff out. It was definitely not that. It was the presence of a lot of good discipleship in our lives individually and then together. Other older voices speaking into our lives and giving us wisdom. And that's why we're such big fans of doing this. The part of it is why we're doing this podcast is we just want to pass on what has been entrusted to us so that more people can benefit from it and live in that wisdom. So yeah, so many good voices. I mean, one thing that we did that I loved and really was prompted by you was while we were dating, you were like, we need to go talk to all my mentors. You had so many of them. And we were in that season of evaluating, should we be married? And we were starting to have those conversations and asking all these older couples in our lives that we knew. And we would go ask them all our questions. And they would ask us questions and they gave us so much great advice. And we'd get in the car afterwards and you were like, get out a piece of paper and a pencil. Like, we got to write down what they just said. And we did. We sat in the car and we wrote down all the wisdom we gleaned. It was like, these were things that stuck out to us. So we were like, we want to remember this. And I still have those pages. I still have all those papers from dating.
Nice.
And you didn't know that?
I didn't remember us writing anything
It's in
down.
your handwriting. You wrote it all down. Anyway, again, just to say the fruit that was there was largely due to community, voices, discipleship, and you can't overstate the value of discipleship in your local body for everything in life, including this. So Ben Stewart, if you're listening and you're like, what are we talking about? He has a book. So Ben Stewart was Jimmy's youth pastor who preached that clarity is kindness thing. And then he's a pastor in DC and wrote a book called Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. That's what the book is called. And he's kind of tackling all of those seasons. And he is so full of wisdom. So if you're interested in a deeper dive on this, that book is great. Well, I think some of what you're feeling, like, where are all the guys who want to get married? I think some goes back to that, what we just said about marriage, that in that episode on marriage is we do want to herald marriage as a good thing in a culture that I think there's a lot of resistance and fear around that commitment. I think for a lot of young men, I mean, I can't speak for them personally, but I just think there need to be more voices, more men saying, this is a good thing. Get married young. Do it. That's not a hindrance to you. That is a good gift to you.
Yeah. I really needed to hear someone say, like, it's not like you can build the plane in the air. Mm-hmm. Right. I needed to know that, like, I remember finances was a big thing for me. I made no money. Are you kidding me? I sing songs.
You just mean with the build the plane in the air, you're saying I didn't need to have it all together before I got married.
I'm saying, and for a guy to look at me, another one of my mentors, and who'd been married for many years at that point, and he was like, dude, you can get married and like eat bologna sandwiches. It'll be okay. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to have a huge nest egg. Mm-hmm. And it's true. When we got married, we found a crappy apartment. Mm-hmm. The rent and utilities was $550 a month, and we just did the thing, man. And
it showed.
And it showed.
It was rough.
But it was just helpful for me to like go, okay, this is like an incredibly sacred union. It's permanent. It's all that, but it doesn't mean that, like, unless you're a marriage scientist who's also Bill Gates, you can't jump into this thing. Jump in. God,
right?
and the same God that carried you in singleness he's going to carry you in the marriage.
Well, and I think, it's interesting hearing you say that. I think it really exposes a flaw in our thinking culturally, that the greater problem is to get married unprepared versus to struggle with sexual morality not married. Where one of the reasons we counseled so many college students to get married so young is it was like, if you already know you want to marry this person, like you already have a sense of this is the right person for me, all that awaits you now is temptation. That's it. Because if you really want to marry this person, all you're going to want to do is increase your physical intimacy with them. That's what God intended, right? So go get married so that you can honor God in the way that you're living that relationship out. And it's like, well, we'd say that. It's like, oh no, well, we couldn't do that. We don't have enough money. We don't have our career started. So it's outing us that we believe the greater evil is to get married unprepared or in a way that would compromise your career or your finances or all this. It's like, no, the greater evil is to be sexually immoral in your dating relationship as a Christian, to not rightly picture God. That's the greater evil here, but we don't tend to think that way. But because when you start to think that way, you realize, okay, that's what Paul's counsel is in 1 Corinthians, right? It says it's better to marry than to burn with passion. Do not live in passion. Do not live in temptation. Just go get married, then figure everything else out. Go make sure you're telling the right story about God. That is priority number one. Then figure the rest out. And if that means for you what it meant for us, which is living very, very simple lives, and in some ways it made it complicated, then do that. But tell the right story about God. It's like, so that's such a huge cultural shift. Very few Christians think that way, but we think more should think that way.
Yeah.
One thing I don't remember who said it. You maybe can remember, but or maybe I read it in a book that it was something to this sentiment that marriage is ultimately it's a gift from God, meaning it's not like if you're not married, it's because you didn't put yourself in the right place, the right time, you're not doing things. Like it is a sovereign good gift from God, which is meant to be a comfort, but also I know can feel not a comfort. What I mean by that is I also have friends. I have friends that are our age, Tiffany, who are also not married, who would really like to be. And it has been just a journey to walk and grieve with them, where they're asking me, am I not doing the right things? It's like, no, I don't know why God has said no. And I don't know why he said yes to me, to this desire at the time he did. But it is ultimately a gift he gives in his time and his way. And he can take it away. I know there's people in our church who are younger than me and widows. So it's a gift he can give. It's a gift he can take away. But it's not. Prolonged singleness, if you are single and you want to be married, is not a reflection of you and is not a reflection of what you're doing or what you're not doing. And sometimes I think we need to hear that because there's a lot of pressure now to put yourself on all the right platforms and do the right things. And I think it is good, right? If you do want to be married, it's like, yes, then make sure you are in spaces where you can meet other men your age that do also want marriage, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to sit in a cave and wait for God to bring me somebody. But ultimately, it's not on your shoulders. It's something that really is a gift from God. Like, what is that verse that you quote at weddings, a lot, that a wife is a gift from God, right?
In Proverbs. Yeah, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord.
Like the point is, finding a wife is a type of, this is a gift from God to you. He is arranging it. So one, just take comfort in that, and also take your complaints to him. God, where are all the men? It's his doing that they're not there right now, right? It's like, and I think it's right and good for us to do that, to bring our genuine kind of childlike, heartfelt, like, God, I don't understand why. He really is the one behind it, which is a comfort to us and also just leads us to go. That's where my questions need to go, is to him. So it's so important to date in community, because it's interesting that there's so many ditches you can fall into. I know women who their standard is so high, and men too. We've talked to men and women who start dating and their expectation of a godly spouse is like, no one would fit that description, right? No one would fit that at all. And they've needed outsiders to say, like what you just said, there's a difference between someone who's trying to follow Jesus and is a sinner and is repentant and really on the path to like growth, and someone who's not. And this person might have some flaws and failures and things you're seeing, but they're, there's no perfect spouse out there. But then there are other people who are I'm so afraid to let go of this relationship that I'm willing to be with anybody, or maybe with somebody who's very clearly not chasing after Jesus or could be harmful to my soul, like you said. But I feel connected to them and I feel good when I'm with them and I'm seeing these things. And it's like, we sometimes don't know which ditch we're in without people who know us and that we can come to, like you said, friends or mentors you could come to and say, hey, I feel like I put walls up real quick. Am I doing that here? Can you ask me about that? Can I just share this a little bit? And they can speak into that. I think that's where we really need other people in our community.
And I don't think it's wrong, by the way, for you to be the one who is bringing up some of the things you have questions about.
Yes,
Kelly did actually with us many times. Kelly was the one who broached the whole, like, we were dating at the time. We were like, so are you like,
how serious
are we going to marry each other or what, bro? Like, you need to say something.
Which came out of some of my own decision making that I was like trying to figure out with schooling, and he was starting the whole touring conversation. And I was like, I could probably graduate with him if I took some summer school, but it's not wise for me to totally restructure my whole life and educational plan if this is not, but he hadn't brought it up. So I was like, I need to ask you.
Yeah. And I think there's something, it's not right, but it feels very Christian to go like, okay, the girl's never going to ask any question about anything because, she's the woman, the man's the leader, and that sort of thing. It's like, I don't know that I get that from Scripture.
No.
First off, remember, we're not in a submission headship relationship in our dating. First off, so it's not the same thing as marriage.
Right.
And the second thing is, gosh, you got questions you got to sort out.
Mm-hmm.
I sure wish the guy would be proactive and bring them up, but sometimes guys are just knuckleheads, quite honestly. And they need you to go like, hey, have you thought about this? You should probably tell me your thoughts about this. And I was 100 million times in our marriage. I'm like, oh, that's a good point. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I should have said this, but this is what I'm thinking, that's like, that's all we do. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about like, you having some questions you need to get answered.
Totally.
It doesn't necessarily reflect on his spiritual maturity that he hasn't said it,
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode on dating. We hope that it answered all of your questions and you fully understand how to date in the 21st century, right?
Yeah, that's right. Dating in the 21st century. Just a reminder too, if you like this content, you can be part of this sort of behind the scenes content every week with us by becoming a podcast partner with us. Head on over to patreon.com, search for Jimmy and Kelly Needham, and you too can join us every time we film these episodes for this really helpful Q&A back and forth. So hope it blessed you, and we will see you guys next time.
Next week.